1. This happened about a year ago. I was visiting friends in the city, about an hour train ride from where I lived. It was getting late and the last train was going to leave in less than an hour. My friends lived about 10 minutes away from the train station by car, so I let them know I'd need a ride soon. My friend who offered to drive me earlier that day was too drunk, so he ordered an Uber to come get me. Normally I would just stay the night, but I was pregnant, in my first trimester, and I just needed the comfort of my boyfriend's bed. We had some time, so as he's ordering the first one, he sees the picture of the driver and cancels it because the man looked creepy. The second one didn't look much better, but at least he seemed less creepy than the first. The irony is ridiculous. He arrives shortly after. I get in the car and he says my friend's name, who is a man, and I tell him he just paid for it, but that he has the right person. He asks my name and if my friend is my boyfriend. I tell him my first name and that no, my friend isn't my boyfriend. He compliments me and I thank him and try to put in a headphone, but he continues to talk to me about how I deserve a boyfriend or something along those lines. Now I must say, I know the city very well. I've lived here before and I spent a lot of time there. I know exactly how to get to the train station, and I always know the best route based on the time. It's pretty late on a weekday, so there wasn't any traffic and pretty much any way he took in the right direction would get me there. He puts the directions in his GPS as popped up on his dash. It tells him to make a left at the next street, which is what you'd have to do to get there since it's a dead end. We start moving and he suddenly asks if cops hang out here. I feel uncomfortable, but I figure he just wants to speed a little. So I say, not really. And he suddenly takes a right into a narrow alley before the left ahead. His GPS is telling him to turn around, but he's still heading in the opposite direction. So I tell him this isn't the right way and he suddenly starts listening to the GPS, like it was just a mistake. So he says, "I'll get you there if you don't mind me speeding." I'm thinking, what the fuck ever. Just get me to my train, so I say sure. And he immediately slams his foot onto the pedal and reaches 50, 60 miles per hour before slamming on his brakes at the stop sign ahead. It is the residential part of the city, so the speed limit wouldn't have been anything over 25 miles per hour, with stop signs every block. He continues to do this while following the directions for 2 blocks, when he blatantly ignores the GPS and starts to head in the opposite direction again. At this point, I'm fully aware he doesn't intend to take me to my train, and I'm texting my friends telling them the situation. They tell me to come back. It had been almost 10 minutes, and we had just gone in circles. But I'm in desperate need of my comfort, so I try again and say, "I'm going to be late for my train. This isn't the right way." He tells me I won't be late for my train, even though he has no idea when it's coming. We go through a light, and there's a new Camaro behind us, riding his ass because that's just how people drive around here. And he starts asking why the cops are following him. I didn't see anything, but he keeps asking me, and gets louder and louder every time I don't answer, in between him mumbling to himself. Eventually, the cop car turns. He calms down, and I notice the time. 15 minutes passed at this point, and I wasn't even a mile away from my friend's house, and I'm definitely not going to make this train. I tell him to take me back, but he insists that I'll make my train. I was fed up and got pissy with him about the time, and told him he had to take me back. He finally obliged, only after slowing down, almost coming to a complete stop in an intersection, next to a bus stop where a girl was standing by herself. He probably noticed my phone buzzing and the lighting up, so he finally, calmly took me back down the street to my friend's house. My friends were standing at the door when I got out of the car, so I walked up to the door. When I looked back to see him, stopped in his car down the street, talking to a hooded person standing on the sidewalk. My guess is he probably thought I was a tourist. I had a giant backpack and a little bag with me from the night before, and he could take advantage of me, so I reported it to Uber and the local Uber drivers page in the city, hoping this will never happen to anyone. 2. The following story contains themes of sexual assault. This all started with me at school. I'm a very social girl. I get along with everyone and talk with as many people as I can manage. I never want to leave anyone alone, because I feel as if everybody needs a friend. Well, at least I thought like that until I met her. Her name was, for this story, Mayu. She was a student in my class. Everybody from the start seemed to be wanting to stay away from her, as she had a creepy vibe coming from her according to them. I didn't see anything wrong with her. She seemed like a typical teenage girl to me, so of course, I went to talk to her. She was a very nice girl. A bit cold at first, but that faded fast. We quickly became good friends. Everything was so perfect at first. We constantly hung out. With her at my place. Actually, we always hung out at my place. She never wanted me to go to hers. I just thought it was because she might have had a bad life at home, so I let it be. We constantly slept in the same bed together. I didn't find that weird a bit as well, because it can be rather uncomfortable to sleep on the floor. And plus, we were good friends, so it wasn't anything weird. She always slept as close to me as possible. Sometimes when she was sleeping, I'm pretty sure she was faking sleeping sometimes. She would wrap her arms tightly around me and bury her head in my chest, sniffing me. I did find that to be rather strange, but found that to be just a random sleeping habit. I was extremely oblivious to everything. My friends always do tend to call me naive. The more she spent her nights at my place, the more my stuff started to disappear, like my makeup, shirts, and what's even weirder, pairs of panties had disappeared somewhere as well. Of course, being the oblivious girl I was, I didn't think anything of it. It was strange to me. But that was as far as I thought about it. Mayu always hugged me as much as she could. Sometimes she even tried to hold my hand at school. She would be smiling brightly at me while we were together and talking. But when somebody else came to talk to me, that being a girl or a boy, she instantly frowned and stayed there, with her arms crossed, just staring at anyone who was talking with me. When I asked her why she was like that, then she just told me that I was her only friend she had ever had, and she didn't want to lose me. I just smiled at her every time and told her I wasn't going to leave her. Every time when she heard me say that, her face would brighten up, and she would hug me tightly, usually sniffing at my hair or clothes while she did so. I didn't mind it, and continued hugging her, feeling glad that I was the one who made her so happy. But not everything was so good between me and Mayu. Whenever I wanted to hang out with somebody else, she would start crying and beg for me to be with her instead. Every time I said yes. I really regret doing so now. Whenever we had to pick pairs when we had to do something in class, then she would every time glare murderously at anyone who dared to try to be together with me. She would cling onto my arm and literally snarl at anyone coming close to me. These were all red flags, and I really didn't like us being friends so much anymore. I barely had time for anybody else besides her. Everything revolved around only her. One time I decided that enough was enough, and hung out with my best friend and crush at the time, Sally, instead. Oh, I forgot to mention that I am a bisexual, and at the time I had a big crush on Sally, and I was actually quite sure she liked me too, as we were both really similar and fit each other perfectly. We had fun together, until the talk went over to Mayu from her side. She told me that I really should stop hanging out with her, as she wasn't a safe person to hang out with, or even worse, be friends with. She told me everything about her that I hadn't seen. She told me how when I wasn't looking in class, she would always take pictures of me. She would come over to my friends and threaten them that if they would come near me, then she would slice their throats. Sometimes she even did the slicing motion with her finger. She had even come to Sally and threatened her the most, not only with her life, but her family life as well. My eyes were wide with absolute shock and horror. My friend had done that to me. She wasn't even my friend. This girl was truly crazy if she threatened my friends like this. I told Sally that I would cut ties with Mayu tomorrow. I planned on telling her that we would no longer be friends. I did feel a tad bad inside because I was her only friend. But she was crazy, so I couldn't take a risk of putting my friends' lives at risk. Once we were done talking about Mayu, we moved on to other topics and spent time together for quite long. I went home when it was already dark. My family was at a party and my big brother was supposed to come back home a bit later. I went upstairs towards my room and almost screamed when I opened the door and saw Mayu on my bed, sniffing one of my shirts. Once she heard me, she turned towards me and gave me a small glare. Her voice was so menacing. I had never heard her talk like that before.
Why were you with that bitch? What's better about her than me?
I took all my courage together and glared back at her as well. This was already getting out of hand fast. She came into my house at night, came to lay in my bed and sniff my clothes. What kind of person does that? I'm too tired to deal with this, Mayu. Get out of my house, now. She glared even more and stood up. She took me by the collar of my shirt and pushed me against the wall. I groaned in pain, and she stared into my eyes with her own angry ones.
How dare you? Why are you trying to replace me? I love you, Samantha. Damn it, I love you so much. Why must you hurt me like this? I'm only trying to do what is good for the both of us.
Tears streamed down her cheeks. While I was there just frozen with shock and fear, she loved me? This wasn't love. This was pure madness, not love. And I would never love someone who has threatened my friends. I don't love you, Mayu. I never will. Just leave my house. I don't want to talk to you again. Just leave. Now! She stood still for a moment, looking down at her feet. I thought that she would leave now, but instead she started to laugh, just laugh. She looked at me again, and I swear I could see the insanity in her eyes. She took me by the waist and then pulled me onto my bed with her on top of me. She smiled down on me and chuckled as she ran her fingers through my hair. It's not nice to lie, you know. I know you love me. You have to. She crashed our lips together in a forceful, disgusting kiss. I whimpered in fear and some tears started to stream down my cheeks as she ran her fingers through my hair and then moved her hands lower and lower on my body. I tried to push her away, but I had always been rather skinny, so I wasn't nearly as strong as her. She started removing my pants, opening her mouth to say something, but she stopped once the door opened downstairs. Samantha, you're still awake, right? I brought her some burgers. I screamed out to my brother, getting a rough slap on my face because of that. My brother heard me and came running upstairs. Once he saw me crying and Mayu on top of me, I swear that his face just said murder. He picked Mayu up, being a lot stronger than her, and then went downstairs. He threw Mayu out of the house, locking the door, before coming back to me. He hugged me and stayed with me the rest of the night until I fell asleep. I missed a few days of school, staying home while mentally recovering. At school, I kept my friends close to me. Mayu tried to talk with me again, but couldn't because all my friends made it so she couldn't get near me. She tried and tried, and she just didn't stop. She sent me text messages on my social accounts. I blocked her everywhere. I was afraid of my own safety as she just wouldn't stop. But one day she just stopped turning up to school. She didn't show up the next day, nor the next. She just stopped showing up. I eventually learned that her parents moved away from her because they were so ashamed of what their child had done to me. I still sometimes have nightmares about her. But they are listening already, and I feel happy and I feel like myself again. All I can hope is that I never have to see her again, 'cause I don't know what I would do if I would. Three. A couple years back, I had a corrective surgery on one of my feet, so they basically had to break it and put it back together. Naturally, I had to wear a hard cast that went from my knee to my toes for several months, which bled into the school year. Now, for comfort purposes, my doctor suggested I get a little scooter, where I could kneel my casted leg and push with my other. Being obviously temporarily handicapped, I would be approached by do-gooders and asked about my condition and whether or not I believed in God several times a week, usually on Wednesdays. Their approach, I later realized, was calculated. Usually it was just one or two people, so at first I didn't think much of it. I would politely decline their offers and scooter away. This one afternoon, I had a couple of hours to kill between my classes, and it was a nice day. I rolled out to the pavilion and settled in a little stone alcove away from activity. I didn't like the attention the scooter brought me. I was looking down at my phone when I heard people approaching. I tried to shrug it off, but being super self-conscious about my condition made me hyper-aware of them. It was a group of 8 or 9 people, and they hovered near me, talking in a tight circle for a short while before surrounding me in the alcove. They seemed passive at first, and as I'm actively non-confrontational, I sort of watched them form a semicircle around me and make themselves comfortable. Now, I was raised in a series of crappy neighborhoods, which also made me inherently suspicious of semicircles, so I took my phone out, texted my friend instructing her to call in 10 minutes, and stuck my hand in my bag to keep hold of my pocket knife, yet another precaution learned from my experience with southern lower-income housing. Anyways, the friendlier of the group settled down next to me and went about introducing herself. "Hi, my name is Joy, and I see that you're hurt. What happened?" Unfortunately for me, while being aggressively non-confrontational, I also have an irresistible desire to be clever, so I spit out one of the crappy, heroic, obviously fictional tales I've piled up to explain my otherwise boring injury. Shark bite. Saved that kid's life, though. When in reality it was a simple, voluntary surgery done to fix a gap between my toes caused by an extra toe I had removed when I was 4 months old. Anyways, do-gooders like do-goodery things, so my little lie did nothing but draw them closer. They proceeded to go on telling their own stories, which I assumed they did to promote sympathy. The girl next to me had a miscarriage at 14. The next closest had an abusive father. The one after a husband recently freed from a wrongfully convicted life sentence in jail, etc. Let me just state that I in no way am trying to belittle these people and what they've been through. I have a naturally cynical way of describing things, and honestly, this story still bugs me to this day. Once they were all done, the girl next to me took over and said something about all their troubles leading them to the almighty solution, Jesus Christ. Another disclaimer. I'm strongly non-religious. I respect people for their chosen faiths, as I believe it takes a great amount of courage to subscribe to a religion. But it's just never been my thing. Continuing, she describes Jesus as this supernatural force that came into their lives, and as soon as they devoted their souls to him, he began helping them in mysterious ways. The girl next to me was healed of her depression and later conceived and carried to full term a beautiful child. The following was relieved of her abusive father and found the courage to move out. The other filed another endless appeal to get her husband released, and miraculously, it worked. And so on. The whole time they're talking, I get the sense they've rehearsed this. I couldn't help but think to myself how many crippled kids they've cornered today and just kept anxiously waiting for them to get to their point. As soon as they were done, those skilled enough to shed a tear wiped their faces and immediately reverted back to the dead-eyed glare they came with. Then their spokesperson, the girl next to me, asked if I believed in God, coming from a highly religious family. I always have an answer prepared for this type of stuff. A kind but forceful version of no, and I'm not interested. They did not get the clue. They were asking about my childhood and what event in my life caused me to stray from my given path, the Lord's path, and eventually, I got so fed up with it I just started my awkward struggle to get up, mumbling something about having to get to class. This spokesperson, this metida pendeja, as we would say where I'm from, grabbed my scooter and pushed it away out of reach. Granted, I was not beneath swinging my leg around and knocking them all straight to hell like it's Sparta, but the girl put her hand on my shoulder. Everyone took a collective step toward me, and she said, "Can we pray for you?" Okay. I started thinking this was still salvageable. I started thinking I could still get out of this without going all Black Widow on them with my pocket knife. So I politely suggested that they can pray for me on their own time, as any good vibe is a good vibe. But they should respect my personal space. The girl then proceeded to push the idea of prayer on me. So much so that it became overwhelmingly clear that in order to get rid of them, I had to agree. So I did. Next thing I knew, she had my hand in hers and she was kissing it. The nearest girl after her had gotten on her knees and started bowing in my direction. The rest of the group started chanting in Latin. Let me just say, Latin is a pretty language and all, but when chanted by a group of people who are swaying in a strangely synchronized fashion, while also being spoken in a low monotone, it's the fucking devil's language, so at this point, I was thinking I was their next blood sacrifice or something. This girl who was basically making out with my palm started whispering into my hand, and I was there, frantically trying to make eye contact with anyone that was walking by. But stupid me and my insecurities sat in the most obstructed alcove in the whole goddamn school. A couple minutes went by, and I actually found myself a little bored. They all seemed to have come to a collective end, and the girl released my hand, which was now covered in a mixture of her saliva and her tears, and she delivered the money line. "And now, my disciple, you may walk." I lost it. If they didn't draw attention with their prayers, I definitely did when I screamed, "Fuck that! I will walk in 4 to 6 weeks as was determined by my licensed physician. Leave now or you will need your fucking Jesus." They sort of collapsed in on me for a second and tried to calm me down by placing their hands on me in what I assumed they thought was a calming gesture. But no. Being touched by strangers is one thing. Being touched by strangers who have been making me uneasy for longer than I would generally allow uneasiness to surround me is something else. That made me even louder, which gratefully drew attention to my alcove. My friend had been calling me, but seeing as I was forcefully distracted, I hadn't answered. She had gotten worried and later told me she followed the sound of my voice because, even though I wasn't screaming bloody murder, my sassiness had a habit of carrying with the wind. Her and some other Samaritans broke the circle around me and threatened to call the dean and have their little club disbanded. They scattered and my friend sat with me for the rest of my break and walked me to class. We joked that between our 3 working legs, we could Jackie Chan them if they came back for more. Once I sat down in class and took my backpack out of the little back seat my scooter had, a bunch of little business cards fell out. I picked one up and it said, "Supernatural Jesus Club. Meets on Wednesdays in room 304. And on the back, scribbled in messy handwriting, was, "We can cure you. See you soon." Needless to say, fuck that. Supernatural Jesus Club. Let's not meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 178. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, first things first, I'm not back. I know it might sound like I am, but I'm not back to regular uploads. I was feeling rested enough to do this video, and I think I've messed my throat up again by making it. So what I'm going to try and do is I will get videos out when I can. I don't know when that'll be. I'll try and keep them going whenever I can. That might mean one a week. It might mean a couple a week. I really can't say. And it will continue that way until I'm healthy enough to get back to my daily uploads, because please let me assure you, it is frustrating to me that I can't put videos up every day. I'd gotten into a nice little routine of it. Then these setbacks with my health happened. But hopefully things settle down soon, and if they do, then I will be able to get back to a regular upload schedule. And if they don't, well, we'll see what happens if they don't. Okay, so I want to thank you all very much for all the nice comments you left on the last video, and also thanks to those of you who sent emails to me wishing me well. Yeah, I think we can leave it there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.